What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? And today I'm going to be talking about Thief Deadly Shadows. I actually did a video on this not too long ago. I believe it was as of last year. And I delved a little bit deep on, I did a little bit of a deep dive on this video of this game and discussing some of the mechanics and what I really truly thought about this game in general. But I'm actually going to be doing a redux, as it were, a little bit here because I really want to talk about this game in so many different types of aspects and the concept of this game. Thief Deadly Shadows was released in May 25th, 2004, and it was pretty close to the release of Doom 3 back on the original Xbox as well. And the reason why I really want to talk about this game again, actually, is because this is actually indeed one of my favorite stealth games of all time, opposite that of, Thief the Dark Project and Thief 2 to Metal Age and, the Metal Gear Solids and Tenchu Stealth Assassins back in the PS1 days. But heretofore, the reason why for this is because I feel like that this game is, it's kind of like a little bit of an underrated gem from that of the original 2 back on PC, because while this game was critically acclaimed to a certain degree from so many different types of outlets, which was IGN, Kotaku, Polygon, Game Informer, or vice versa. But heretofore, I really think that when it comes to Thief the Deadly Shadows, is that, I really like the way how this game has a risk and reward system. There's so many games that have this type of concept to it. And it's the fact that this game takes place in a Victorian steampunkish setting. And it's the reason why I love the original 2 back on PC. And it's the reason why I love stealth games in general, is because there's always a risk and reward involvement when it comes to these types of games. I really think when it comes to most games out there that doesn't have much of a risk and reward, maybe sometimes they do, whether if it's a first-person shooter or whether if it's like any other type of genre, whether if it's an RPG like Final Fantasy. But I think when it comes to stealth games in general, I think the Thief games and Metal Gear and Tenchu and all that kind of stuff, there's always going to be a risk and reward. Now, what I really want to discuss about here, though, too, is that this game is more based on evasion rather than being noticed. And I think the reason why this game is so well loved, even by me, is because not just because I played the original 2 on PC, which were absolutely fascinating. I absolutely loved them. But I think Thief Deadly Shadows it's one of those games to where it was far more unique in a certain type of way and conceptual way from the originals. I think when it came to the originals, it was its level structure and its level systems and, being able to progress certain types of areas by, utilizing going out alternate different type of pathways. And Thief Deadly Shadows was able to do that pretty well. I think that Thief Deadly Shadows had a very unique progression system from the originals, because their progression system in the originals were in fact mission based. While Thief Deadly Shadows is part of the mission based structure, they are always going to bring you to certain different types of areas within the game. Much like the original titles, they brought you to certain different types of areas as well. But what Thief Deadly Shadows does when it comes to its leveling structure, like the Kershak Citadel, you have to get the throne from there, right? You have to go to the Wheelstrom Museum, which is pretty close to the end of the game, to get the several artifacts. And that's where I really loved about Thief Deadly Shadows, though. It was the mechanics of this game that was very influential from what the original was able to do. And I think that's where this game really does a really good job of showing off each of these structures of the game individually. And it's the visual concept. I've always debated this, or I've always talked about when it comes to visual appealing things when it comes to video games. So whether if it's video games or movies, but video games has always been the core mechanic for me when it comes to playing a video game, because I've always been really good when it comes to visuals. I think Thief Deadly Shadows It actually aged a little bit better than I think than from the original 2, because while this game was on the original Xbox and or on PC, is that it was the fact that what this game was able to do, it had a better engine, like a creation, not like a creation engine from like Skyrim or Oblivion or whatnot, but Thief Deadly Shadows I forgot what kind of engine that it used, but Ion Storm was the company that actually made this game. But Looking Glass, which is now a defunct studio that made the original games before this game. And that's why I think Deadly Shadows, it takes a lot of implementation from what the original 2 were able to do in terms of the style of gameplay. There are no different, you can't do any like creation or anything, which is nice, because usually when you play a stealth game, specifically like in Skyrim or in Oblivion, you have that character creation, right? You can do that type of mode. But you can't do that when it comes to the Thief games, because Thief has always been the motivation. It's always been the structure of being that master thief known as Garrett. And I think that's another reason why I love this series as a whole, not just because of a stealth game. It's the reason what this game was able to pertain and how to utilize the thief system in this game. And what makes this game even more important is the fact that it uses a light gem. The light gem is actually able to implement, light and shadow movements. You have to be, when you're in stealth mode, you have to basically use the shadows more appropriately, because you can use the shadows at your disposal more so, because, what they were able to do with the engine of this game is that, each type of area within the game, when there are shadows, that shadow is actually able to have that shadow effect from different types of structures in the game, like walls or lighting effects, and bounce, and those lighting effects are able to bounce off certain types of objects and creating that shadow effect. They were actually able to utilize the engine for this game to do so, which is really cool. And that's one of the greatest things what I really loved about, not just from the originals, but it was the fact of what Thief Deadly Shadows was actually able to do. And it's the reason why I think Thief Deadly Shadows did a much better job in so many types of ways, other than what the originals were able to do and what this game was capable of. Because mind you got to think about it this way: even though that this game was released in 2004, it was the fact that this game is not as old as it is pretty old as that of the original 2, because Thief Deadly Shadows came out in 2004, like I previously mentioned, but Metal Age came out in 2002, 2001, excuse me. And then Thief the Dark Project came out, I believe it was 1998 or 1999, but it just goes to show you of how far a game series like this can go. And what I will say is that Thief the Dark Project did not age very well, even though that its core systems and the leveling structure of each of the levels in the Dark Project were so absolutely amazing. I love the way how it was able to, for example, when you had a mission in the first one to where you had like of the structure of the level, it was like in a kaleidoscope type of way or visual aesthetic. It was dope. It was awesome. And that's one thing I think the original Thief, the Dark Project, was able to do very well, which was its level design and its systems. However, when it came to Thief 2, the Metal Age, it didn't have that. It did have that type of feel to it from the original. But Thief Deadly Shadows, this game, other than it being a stealth game as it is, it's the fact that this game takes place, I believe, I don't know how many years it takes place after the first 2, but it's still a direct sequel. It's not a reboot or anything. It's not. I think a lot of people are saying that this game was a reboot to that of the original 2. It's really not, because if you think about it, if it was a reboot, then you would play a totally entirely different character, right? Garrett is the original character from the very first 2 games, so this is a sequel. And so I really think what makes Thief Deadly Shadows so different, other than it being its still core mechanic systems of being a stealth game and stealing to be that Robin Hood type of thing, having money to yourself or give it to someone else, but it really doesn't give you that type of aspect or concept to it. But point being, this game just does. I love the visual appealing aesthetic to this game, which is really what makes me more breathtaking to a game like this, other than it being an old school title. But here's the thing, I'm gonna thoroughly admit something here real quick. I'm a huge nostalgia fan. I've always been that way when it comes to gaming in general, but I'm not saying I don't like the new stuff the way we have today. It's just the fact that when it comes to old school, like Thief, Metal Gear Solid, all these games from back in the previous years, it's astounding of that these games were able to achieve a much better visual fidelity and the engines that these games provide to run on. And I just think that this game is just absolutely amazing. One thing I will say is that Thief Deadly Shadows is based on the story of the fourth glyph. That's all I will say, and because I don't want to spoil it. I know a lot of people have already played this game, but other than that, there is a level in this game I really want to talk about here though too. It's called the Shellbridge Cradle. It's one of the most pinnacle and one of the most interesting levels I've ever seen in a game in gaming history. I'm sure that there are other games that when it comes to stealth games, they do have some memorable moments. They do have memorable levels, much like I would say maybe Thief 2 The Metal Age or Thief the Dark Project. But Thief Deadly Shadows shows off the Shellbridge Cradle mission in this game where it's eerie, it's dark, it's foreboding, it's broody, but that was the core mechanic of that level. And that's one of the things what I greatly appreciated about this game. And it's the fact that what this game was able to actually to do, like showing off a very dark conceptual design of a level like the Shellbridge Cradle. Because honestly, I don't think I've ever seen any other type of game. Actually, no, that's a little bit of a lie, because there is one game I do remember. It was called The Suffering. And that game, or I think it was Condemned Origins as well, those two games were pretty memorable in certain types of ways because they did have those games were utterly brutal, but there were aspects and concepts to where there were some levels in those games that were horrifically terrifying. But that's where the Shellbridge Cradle was able to provide that as well from Thief Deadly Shadows. And I think that's where I really loved about this game as well. And it just goes to show you of what a company is able to utilize the systems of showing off what a level can do to make you scared. And what Condemned Origins was able to do, what The Suffering was able to do. Or like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, or any other game that has that type of horror aspect to it. It's phenomenal. And so I think that's why I think the Shellbridge Cradle, especially in a Thief game like Deadly Shadows, it's amazing. I have never seen a level that is so well put together, and its level design systems, it's astounding. And so what I will say is that I actually highly recommend this series, really, because of the fact that this series as a whole is very highly popular. I'm sure a lot of people still play it to this day in 2024, because you got to understand is that these games were not just of the pinnacle of stealth game or stealth genre as a whole. It was the fact that what these games were able to really do and initialize a whole new set of gameplay style, which is stealth, which is based on evasion rather than being noticed. And that's basically what the core gameplay mechanics are when it comes to Thief Deadly Shadows, Thief the Dark Project, and Thief 2 The Metal Age. And I think that's why I think this series is absolutely phenomenal. I have never had so much fun in a game much like Thief Deadly Shadows or the original two Thieves. And I would love to see games like this come back. And I want to put this here real quick, as I may. I played Thief 2014. I played it through twice, and I'm going to say one thing. That game was utterly atrocious. And the character that did the voiceover for Garrett, his name is Romano Arzari. He actually plays Ezio Father in Assassin's Creed Lineage, which was a live movie on YouTube. You can watch it over there. If you played AC2, he also played the father in that game as well, the game especially. But other than that, Thief 2014, it wasn't. It was just terrible. I'm sorry to say it, because I mean, it did not bring any of the core factors of what the original series was able to do. While it did retain a little bit of the evasion and not being noticed, but to me personally, that game dumbed it down so badly, it just didn't work. And I think that's one of the reasons why that game faltered. A lot of people actually hated that game. It was not critically acclaimed. It was heavily criticized. There were no quest markers involved in the original games. You literally had to figure a lot of things out on your own. While Thief 2014 did not initialize that. It did not utilize that type of system from the original games. And I think that's another reason why Thief 2014 faltered. And it's a shame. But other than that, Thief Deadly Shadows shows off amazing visual fidelity of its systems, of showing off different types of lighting structure and bringing it to life to a game like this, much like of an older title. But that's where I say that, this game, it's the reason why I think when it comes to nostalgia gaming like Thief Deadly Shadows or the original series or like Metal Gear Solid or Tenchu, you got to understand that these games are they might have been the most important games in gaming history, but this is what I'm saying. These games are not being made anymore. And it's the reason why I like making these types of videos, is because I share my passion. I share my sympathy as to why I think that these games are just so utterly amazing. And like I said, I want to see games like this again. While I do believe that we might not get these anymore, but it would be nice. It's just that it just goes to show you that the video game industry has changed very much so for more than 10 years. And so all I can say is this: if you really want to provide yourself a good sense of certainty and going back to nostalgic gaming, I do highly recommend playing the original Thief games from 1 to 2 to 3, which is Deadly Shadows. But anyways, much further ado, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to reply back whenever possible. And like I said, you guys have a great rest of your week and have a good upcoming weekend. And I'll chat you guys later. See ya.